Alright everyone, today's video is Monster Showcase Star Blasted Bruiser, and I made this guy using two of my documents that I mentioned before, the dummy spreadsheet, which is an approximation of each party member at all levels 1 through 20, and a list called the mega thread of all the monster abilities, which I'll link below, and it'll be posted in my Discord. So I'm gonna go over the monster, his stats, and his origin as well, because I think that gives you a good sense of who the monster is. And this took me about 15-20 minutes to make, so it should be pretty easy because a lot of it's all right there. It's very self-explanatory. You just pick a level of PC for him to be measured against, and then you throw on all the abilities you want. So there was once a cult called the Falling Fire, and they worshipped Hadar, the Dark Hunger. They were a group of warlocks, and in one of their rituals, they summoned in their guard, their enforcer, just a brute fighter wielding a great sword and plate mail. And when he stepped into the room, they invoked Hadar, and he was blasted with eldritch magic. It infused his armor into his skin, and his left hand became a great sword, and his mind was broken into horrible, shattered pieces. He went on a killing spree. Everyone in the room he slaughtered. The few who made it out never spoke of the day again, as they had been silenced by the mere presence of the creature. So that's kind of his origins, and that explains a lot of his abilities. So I gave him an armor class of 18 because of his armor had been fused in, and I gave him hit points of 60 because the average player at that point is 53, so I thought 60 was a nice number. I might bump that up to 80, I haven't decided. He's got an attack bonus of 10 and an average damage of 21. Now, he would have been using extra attack, but his greatsword is held just by his left hand, so he's not really going to be capable of swinging it very fast, and he doesn't have the mental capacity these days to grab it with both hands and swing twice. He's got a DC of 16, so for all of the saves, there's gonna be several abilities here that require saves. I'm just gonna set that to 16. Some people do different DCs for all the monster abilities. For my own sanity, I can't do that. That would be way too much for me to track. But he's got 4 sensory abilities. He's got Otherworldly Perception of the Kotoa, which gives him the ability to see invisible creatures and into the ethereal plane for 30 feet. He's got Blindsight of 30 feet as well. He's got Keen Senses, so he's advantage on his perception checks, and he's got the Telepathy feat from the Awakened Warlock, where he can, it's the Awakened Mind from the Great Old One Warlock. You guys know the ability. So as far as his actions, he's got several that he can take. The Agonizing Strike, the Maddening Touch, and the Blinding Gaze. Each of these are applied respectively by the sword, which deals an additional 12 psychic damage on one of these attacks. The Touch of the right arm, which will render someone blind and deaf for 10 rounds, and they can make that save every round. And then the Maddening Gaze, where if he just makes eye contact with you, he can afflict you with the Crown of Madness spell for 10 rounds. And if you succeed against any of these saves, you're good for 24 hours, as well as the Dreadful. If you're within 90 feet of him, you need to make a wisdom saving throw or be frightened for 10 rounds. You can repeat the save every round, and if you succeed, you are immune to his Dreadful ability for 24 hours. Now, his next action is called Grab, Prone, Pin. He'll attempt to grapple, and then if he succeeds on the next round, he will attempt to knock you prone. If he succeeds on the next round, he's going to pin you. So if you get to the pin point, you are stuck there until someone else frees you, and he can afflict you with any of his touch attacks, with any of his 3 attacks listed below, the Agonizing Strike, Blinding Touch, and Maddening Gaze, with no save from you. You just are afflicted by the effect because he's got you in the prone position, or the pinned. And then his final ability is Leadership. So if he decides to use his leadership, it's not like a regular one. The specters that haunt him, they will be urged on to attack by the blood frenzy. So I called it leadership because that's what it is. His allies get to attack, but it's not really leadership. It's more like frenzy, maybe. So whenever it's got to recharge, whenever he lands a crit or kills a player, he can summon more of these specters. But when combat starts, he's going to start with 2 specters. Whenever he uses his frenzy, he will summon 2 more specters. And I'll have their stats probably in my Discord. It's too much to have in the comment section here as well, but I'll have their stats in my Discord. And I'll have his stats. I can fit his stats in the description here. But his stats will also be located in the Discord. So he's also got some passive abilities, all right? He's got magic resistance and natural armor because his armor has been infused into him. He has Inscrutable, which means his thoughts can't be detected. Nothing can happen with his mind and divination magic unless he allows it to happen. Stony Silence, he has a big bonus to his stealth checks. In fact, he is unnoticeable from the wall around him if he is silent and immobile against a stone wall. He's got Action Surge from the fighter because he was a fighter before he was blasted. He's got Sneak Attack for 12 damage. He's surprisingly stealthy now because his armor, since it's in his skin, doesn't give him disadvantage on stealth. That's how I made it. So he's going to be kind of like a sneaky guy, striking out of the shadows. Basically, he's just going to be sitting against a stone using his Stony Silence, and whenever anyone walks by, he's like an ambush predator. He just swings out with the greatsword and starts combat with a nice surprise round. And if a creature has a surprise round, I give it advantage on the initiative roll because like it knew what was going to happen. Like it's an ambusher, so it would be kind of ready. So I give them advantage on their initiative rolls. And that's how that. Oh yes, and he's got a radiant sword that's been brightened by the rays of Hadar, or darkened, however you choose to look at it. But every strike will deal an additional 5 damage, which is factored into the average damage of 21. It was 16, and then now it's 21 because of the radiant strikes. And then finally, he has Sneak Attack for 12 damage. So if he pops his Sneak Attack off, he'll deal an additional 12 damage. And one of the best combos with this guy is an Agonizing Strike Sneak Attack on his first move, dealing 21 plus 12 plus 12. A lot of damage out of nowhere. That's how I like to start my fights, is a really strong punch. I like to lead heavy because, monsters aren't like players. They don't have to deal with other people coming, probably. So there's no reason for them not to Nova. Alright, so here's what I want you guys to do. I want you to comment down below and in my Discord about some of the coolest monsters you've ever fought and abilities you've faced and some of the homebrew monsters you really love to throw at your players. And then I want you to share and subscribe so that everyone can see this video. I'll have linked to my video on Better Combat because I mentioned it, and my 2 videos that are also in this series about monster design and the Dummy Spreadsheet. Pro tip before I go, if you want to power up your monsters, and you don't want them to have uber stats and uber health because that's not fun for the players if they're just hitting a wall of hit points. That's not fun. So give them a lot of abilities from the Mega Thread. Like I gave this guy 6 actions, and including his attack, and not including his attack action, and he has a bonus action grapple I should mention as well. Give them all of his abilities here are bonus actions because all the Maddening Strike, Blinding Touch, and Agonizing Strike on Leadership, those are all bonus actions because every turn he's going to be swinging with his greatsword. So give your monster a bunch of abilities to power it up rather than giving it an extreme amount of hit points or an extreme armor class, because then your players are just hitting a wall. And is that really fun? No, that's not really fun. Anyways, goodbye, good luck, and have fun in your games.